I inherited my uncle's estate, and my family turned into a pack of hungry hyenas. Now, I'm living in the woods with a shotgun and a lot of rusty iron. You know, they say that the death of a loved one brings a family together. What a load of crap. In reality, nothing rips the masks off people faster than the scent of potential money. I've lived in Washington state my whole life, working as a mobile mechanic. It's a dirty, heavy, but honest job, and I always thought my relatives were the same, simple, hard-working people. How wrong I was. It all started 2 weeks ago, when my Uncle Hank passed away. He was a real hermit, a legendary old-timer in our parts. He lived on the outskirts, 20 miles from the nearest town, in a house that looked more like a spare parts warehouse than a home. Hank was obsessed with machinery. He'd buy everything at government auctions, from old logging trucks to massive diesel generators that once powered remote mines. He truly believed that iron was the only reliable investment in this world. I was the only one who ever stopped by to check on him, not because I was hunting for an inheritance. I never even thought he had anything of value. I just felt sorry for the old man. I'd bring him groceries, help him patch up the roof after the winter storms, and spend hours listening to his endless stories about how to properly tune fuel pumps on old Cummins engines. To me, he was just a lonely guy who loved gears more than people. Then came the funeral. There were so many people at the cemetery that I initially thought I'd walked into the wrong service. Everyone showed up. Aunt Susan, who had spent the last 20 years calling Hank a dirty, useless drunk. My cousin Brad, who in his 30 years of life had never lifted anything heavier than a beer bottle. Distant nieces in fancy hats, wiping dry eyes for their social media stories. They weren't there to mourn. They were waiting for the lawyer to open his briefcase. We gathered in the lawyer's office afterward, a cramped old room smelling of stale paper and dust. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and began to read the will. I wish I had a camera to record that exact second, when it was announced that the house, 40 acres of timberland, and the entire contents of the industrial hangars were going to me. The air in the room just vanished. It was a total vacuum. Aunt Susan was the first one to explode. She jumped up so fast her chair flipped over and slammed against the wall. "That's impossible," she shrieked. "Hank was out of his mind. This boy must have drugged him, or intimidated him into signing that." Brad just stood by the window, clenching his fists so hard his knuckles turned white. They were absolutely convinced that Hank was a secret millionaire, and that somewhere on that 40-acre plot, there were canisters filled with cash buried in the dirt. I tried to tell them the truth. I told them the house was a wreck, the land was mostly swamp and thick brush, and that I didn't have a dime to fix any of it. But they weren't listening. In their eyes, I was the villain who had stolen their rightful jackpot. 3 days later, I drove out to the property for the first time as the owner. I just wanted some peace to sort through Hank's paperwork, but as I pulled up the driveway, I saw that the front gate, the one I had personally welded for him last summer, was lying in a ditch. Someone had hooked a chain to it and ripped it out with a truck. I walked up to the big hangar, the one where Hank kept his special projects. The double doors were wide open. Inside, it was a scene of total devastation. These idiots, they really thought the old man was hiding gold bars inside the machinery. They had torn apart my favorite Caterpillar 3412 generator, a machine I had dreamed of restoring since I was a kid. They drained the black oil right onto the concrete floor, ripped the control panels out, and scattered precision parts all over the dirt. They were looking for treasure in the only place they knew, inside the metal. While I was standing there, trying to process the damage, I heard the roar of an engine. Brad's beat-up Chevy truck pulled right into the hangar, kicking up dust. He climbed out of the cab, arrogant as ever, a cigarette dangling from his lip. "Oh, look, the lucky winner is here," he sneered. "Listen to me, cuz we know the old man stashed a lot of cash. Give us our fair share, and we'll forget the lawsuit. Otherwise, we'll burn this whole place down with you inside it." I didn't argue. I'm a mechanic. I know how to work with stubborn iron. But you can't fix an idiot. I just looked him in the eye and said, Brad, I haven't found a single dollar, but if you're so determined to keep looking, go ahead. Just stay out of the basement under the main house. I haven't checked the structural integrity yet, and there might be old fuel reserves down there. It's extremely dangerous. I saw the spark in his eyes immediately. It's a classic psychological trick. Tell a greedy idiot don't go there. And it's the only place he wants to be. The next day, I got to work. I took several large, ironclad toolboxes I found in the scrap pile. I filled them to the brim with rusty bolts, heavy brake rotors, and scraps of lead pipe. I nailed them shut with long spikes, making it look like I was trying to hide something incredibly heavy and valuable. I conspicuously dragged them into the darkest corner of the basement, knowing full well that Brad was likely watching me through binoculars from the ridge behind the house. I also remembered a specific technical feature of that basement. There was an old inspection pit that Hank used for repairing small tractors. It was deep, narrow, and currently filled halfway with a nasty, stagnant mixture of rainwater, spent motor oil, and old diesel fuel. It was a slippery, foul-smelling sludge. I took a thin, rotting sheet of old plywood, laid it over the pit, and dusted it with dirt and cobwebs, until it blended perfectly with the rest of the floor. That night, I drove back into town to get some supplies, but I left the porch light on and the basement door slightly ajar. Around 2:00 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a notification from a hidden trail camera I'd mounted in the basement rafters. The footage was better than anything Hollywood could produce. Brad and his junkie friend had broken in, flashlights beaming everywhere. They spotted the heavy toolboxes and rushed toward them, shoving each other out of the way. Brad was the first to step onto my bridge. It was a perfect vertical drop. He hit the sludge instantly, going in chest deep. His friend tried to pull him out, but he slipped on the oily plywood and fell in right next to him. They spent the next 20 minutes thrashing around in that black, stinking soup, screaming and cursing at the top of their lungs. And when they finally managed to crawl out, smelling like a refinery fire, they used their crowbars to smash open the toolboxes. When they saw nothing but rusty bricks and old bolts, the scream Brad let out probably woke up every bear in the Cascade Mountains. The next morning, they were gone. They left behind a trail of oily black footprints all across the yard. Now, the rest of the family is trying to sue me for intentional bodily harm and creating a booby trap. Aunt Susan is calling my mother every hour, crying about how I've become a dangerous monster. But I don't care. My lawyer confirmed the will is ironclad. I have the video evidence of them trespassing and destroying property. I've filed a police report, and I'm not backing down. It's going to take me months of grueling work to fix the machines they broke. I'll be covered in grease and rust every single day. And I barely have enough money for the gaskets and filters I need. But you know what? This iron is more precious to me than any of those people. Iron doesn't lie. It doesn't pretend to love you while reaching for your wallet. And if I can breathe life back into these old diesel engines, I'll know that Uncle Hank would be proud. As for my family, well, they know not to mess with my basement anymore. Rusty iron has its secrets, and sometimes it bites back a lot harder than you expect. If you've ever had to deal with vultures in your own family after a funeral, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Stay safe out there and watch where you step.